Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Air with Brian Gregory on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We are live from Fort Worth, Texas, and we have a jam-packed show today. This is officially my first ever mailbag show. I've been wanting to do one of these for a while now, and so I posted on TikTok the other day. I said, everybody out there, give me your flaming hot college football take. And let me tell you, I got some insane ones. I got some really interesting ones, really juicy ones. So I'm going to break those down today and give my thought process, my viewpoint on them. I got a really peculiar one, I will say. I'm not going to name names of the person that wrote this comment, but somebody actually asked me, Brian, do you have pubes on your head? And I honestly just didn't even respond. I was just taken aback. I laughed. I thought it was funny that they had the audacity to say that. But I chuckled. I thought it was pretty funny. I'm like, yeah, what do you think? And so we've got hot takes today, and we've got thoughts on SMU going into this year. After their red-hot season last year, it was a monumental season for the Mustangs. So I'm going to break down whether or not I think SMU can build on what they did last year and what the optics look like for the Mustangs going into this year. But this is a really exciting show and something that fits just perfectly into the middle of July. And so let's start with these college football hot takes. First and foremost, Jason M. hit me and said, Miami goes 12-0, wins the ACC, and gets a top 4 seed. This isn't impossible. I think it's far-fetched. I think this will be a very challenging feat for Miami to pull off, given their schedule, given the composition of this team going into this year. I think that Carson Beck is playing behind a better offensive line than he played with at Georgia. I mean, that offensive line was far below the Georgia standard last year. He faced a lot more pressure than I thought he ever would have in a Bulldogs uniform. And just looking at this Miami offensive line on paper, at least going into this season, I think it looks better. I think he'll have better protection. I think he's got an average receiving core, but given his skill sets, I think that it's something that he can really build off of and make the most out of. And I love Mark Fletcher in the backfield. I think that he's a running back that opens up the passages for Carson Beck and allows him to be who he is. And that's one thing that I'll say about the criticism of Carson Beck last year is that some of it was granted. I mean, there are games like that Alabama game, that Texas game where he was a turnover machine. But I'm going to say this right now. It was not all his faults. Georgia's offense as a product overall was very disjointed. A lot of drops in the receiving core. Offensive line was not what we expected. Running backs were not what we expected. I think the situation can be a little bit better in Miami this year. And, I mean, the secondary should improve. I mean, given what that was last year, it was burnt toast. Like, Cam Ward had to score at least 38 points to win every game. I mean, that's about as low as you can go, so you can really only go up from there. I think it's safe to say, by default, that Miami's secondary will be better. You can count on them being good on the trenches on both sides of the ball. However, I look at Miami's schedule, and it's no cupcake. And that's where I think, Jason, that the 12-0 component of this take becomes a little bit tricky, is because Miami opens the season with Notre Dame this year. No room to breathe. I mean, you don't have any Florida A&M, any FAU, any Kennesaw State to open up with. No strays in those schools at all, but Miami would be like 35-point favorites in those respective games. No. You get the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who are coming off of a national championship appearance. That's your first game. That's challenging. They've got the Florida Gators, who I'm very high on this year. They've got Louisville, who with Jeff Brom, you can always count on being a challenging team. I think Miller Moss flourishes with them. You've got SMU, who's just in the ACC championship we're talking about today. You've got Syracuse, Fran Brown's Orange. That's never an easy out. And you have to go up north to play Pitt, on Thanksgiving weekend. We know what happened to Miami against Pitt back in 2017. Those are very tough games, very losable games. I don't like to sound negative like that, but those are losable games for Miami this year. That makes 12-0 tough. I think they can win the ACC. I think this team is capable under Mario Cristobal's guidance and with the composition of this roster. But you're going up against Clemson, who's a coach's dream. That chemistry there, 81% return production. You've got SMU and Kevin Jennings in that conference, and you've also got Georgia Tech, the Haynes combo that I'm very high. And go check out my video a few weeks ago. And Syracuse is always just sitting right there. Louisville's always sitting right there. It's going to be tough for Miami to win the ACC and go 12-0. I think they're capable of making the playoffs, but like I discussed on the pod with Luke a few weeks ago, I think that there's just a lot of losable games on the schedule. I see more realistically a 9-3 or an 8-4. All right, that's hot take number one. Hot take number two. Mr. Byron Sharp hit me up on TikTok. And a little backstory about Byron Sharp. I used to work with this fucking guy at AT&T Stadium. This guy's a pisser, man. I love Byron. Him and I would have some fiery conversations about the Alabama Crimson Tide because he's a Texas A&M Aggies fan. And he'd always been there jarring me after an Alabama loss, which is not a great decision. He'd get me pretty fired up. But after a while, we got to see eye to eye. We got some pretty good rapport. And so Byron hit me on here the other day, and vintage Byron says, Texas A&M will be better than Bama. Okay. Do I think this is going to be the end result this year? No. I think Alabama is a better team than A&M. I think they're deeper. I think they have a better roster. They have a coach who coached a national championship. Is it possible for A&M to be better than Alabama? Absolutely. This is the SEC. This is college football. The ball is shaped weird. You get into those one-possession games, late turnover, late blunder. That could be the difference between 11-1 and 9-3, 10-2 and 8-4. And so, as you saw with Alabama and A&M last year, shit happens. You think Alabama would have taken care of business against Oklahoma. No, they didn't. You would have thought that A&M would have gone into Auburn and taken care of business. No, they didn't. That happened on the same weekend. So the point that I'm trying to make here is chaos can happen. And there's more parity in college football now than ever. There's more parity in the SEC than ever. So I wouldn't put it past A&M to be better than Alabama. And there's a lot of things about this Texas A&M team that I like very much. I think that Marcel Reed is going to be a factor. Marcel Reed is going to be a problem this year. Le'Veon Moss, who, kind of got arrested yesterday or early this morning. But there's been reports that he's already been released. I don't think there'll be any issue with his playing time this year. It was just a July story, wrong place, wrong time. So we're going to assume that Le'Veon Moss is playing. This is one of the best running backs in college football. Of course, they got Casey Concepcion from NC State. And I love this A&M defense. Torian York, TJ Searcy, the addition from Florida. A&M's defense will be nasty this year. This is a team that has a really high ceiling. So, of course, with A&M, you're always looking to break that 8-4 curse, as you will. If you're an A&M fan, you know what I'm talking about, that battered Aggie syndrome. It seems like year in, year out, it's a repeat of the same scenario every year. But I trust Mike Elko. I think that he's leading this program in a great direction right now. I trust him. This is a team that I think is capable of winning 9 or 10 games this year. Ultimately, I think that A&M is a team that's fighting for a wild card spot, that's fighting for one of those final 11 spots, or forgive me, whatever number it is now. They're fighting for one of the last spots in the playoff this year. Whereas I think Alabama is a team that's playing in Atlanta. I do. That's my viewpoint on Bama this year. I think you've got the best receiving core in college football. You've got a fantastic offensive line. You've got a bruising defensive line, deep running back room. I think that Ty Simpson fits great with the scheme at Alabama. Cornerback room is nasty. There's not a lot of holes on this Alabama team. So on paper, Alabama looks like one of the best teams in the nation. I see 10 to 11 wins for Alabama this year, but it is Kalen DeBoer's second year. It's his second year, and right now he's unproven as Alabama's head coach. So I can't say with the same definitive confidence that I would for a Nick Saban Alabama team that, oh yeah, this is a bona fide national championship team. No, like those question marks are there. They're justified. They're justified about Mike Elko too. There's a cool comment by Byron because I can see it going either way here. It's a really hot take, but at the end of the day, I see Alabama being a better team than A&M. All right, hot take number 3. Username hit me up here. I don't know if this is a real account, something that was suspended once, or if it's a bot. I don't know. But this individual said to me, Aiden Childs, Michigan State's quarterback, is a dark horse Heisman. Damn. This may be the hottest, most batshit crazy take that I received in this comment section. Aiden Childs, he's only 19 years old. He'll turn 20 this year. Technically, he's a junior because he spent some time at Oregon State before transferring to Michigan State. He had a very underwhelming, very average year last year. 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Michigan State's offense just struggled to move the ball a lot last year. Offensive line wasn't great. Receiving core wasn't great. A lot of drops, a lot of inconsistency. I don't put it all on Aiden Childs, but he is a very undeveloped product right now. He'll have to take quite a leap to be a Heisman contender, but I don't think that's bold to say that Aiden Childs will be an improved quarterback this year. He has another year under his belt. I think he'll be more mature. I think that his receiving core is much better this year, and so that will work to his advantage. I think that you'll see him start to improve. You'll see him evolve. You'll start to see him develop into the player that he was always supposed to be. Because I've got confidence in Aiden Childs. I think that he has a high ceiling, but he has to improve from what he was last year. And it's not all on his shoulders. Just like Carson Beck, there is other extenuating circumstances surrounding Aiden Childs. I think that his situation improves this year. Michigan State, a little more stability. It's a batshit crazy take, him being a Heisman contender, but I think that we see a much improved Aiden Childs this year, and maybe Michigan State makes a run. I mean, who's to say? I think that's out there too, but I think Sparty's better this year, and I think Aiden Childs is better this year. So there you go, username, if you're anywhere out there. All right. Hot take number 4. P. Kenny 00 hit me here and said, Iowa State goes 11-1 or 12-0. And I like this take. I think it's middle of the road. Like if you were to rank it on a somewhat boldness scale, shout out Josh Pate, I put it at like 0.65, relatively speaking. Iowa State has a 61% returning production. So it's middle of the road. I mean, you've got other teams in this conference, like Arizona State, bringing back 79%. It's not quite that. And Arizona State beat the brakes off of Iowa State right down the road in Arlington a few months ago. But most of this offense comes back. Rocco Beck comes back, who's the heart and soul of this Iowa State Cyclones offense. And that's huge. When you have your vocal leader, you have your emotional leader coming back, that speaks miles, regardless of who's coming back on that offense. I mean, he's the fabric of the offense. It's like Josh Hoover coming back to TCU. It's just a factor. Iowa State's schedule, though, it's tough. I'm going to say it. It's that Big 12 gauntlet. Iowa State starts the season before anybody else does. That's right. I said it. They are a week 0 culprit this year. So we will be watching the Cyclones play on August 24th, and I can't fucking wait. They're starting the season in Ireland against the Kansas State Wildcats, who are another Big 12 favorite this year. This is a clash of the Titans on week 1. We get Arizona State and Texas Tech in October, but we get this gem on week 1. And so bringing this back to Iowa State, it's kind of like Miami. You don't want to start your season like this because if Iowa State wins this game, yes, it can bring back a lot of confidence. It can bring a lot of confidence into this team. However, you never want to start a season with a loss, especially going into that gauntlet of a Big 12 schedule that they'll have this year. I mean, they've got to play Arizona State. They got to play BYU. They have to come here to Fort Worth and play TCU. This is not an easy schedule for Iowa State. I can see them dropping a few of those games. And so to go 11-1 or 10-2 again, it's tough when you're in Iowa State, you're in Arizona State, you're a BYU, you're a TCU. Teams that I think are constructed very well and that have great leadership and great vision, everything you could ask for out of an organization. I mean, Iowa State has that with Matt Campbell. This is a great organization. But to navigate that schedule and emerge, don't forget about Cyhawk with Iowa either. That's another one. But to emerge from this schedule at 11-1 or 10-2, it's a tough ask. It's a mildly hot take. I wouldn't be surprised if they do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do it either. But I like that take from P. Kenny 00. All right. Hot take number 5. Got a lot to say about this one. Hit me up on TikTok and claimed that Penn State, the Nittany Lions, will win the national championship and Drew Aller will be the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. This is a loaded hot take right here. And there's a lot that has to go hits me's way for this to come into fruition. Now, I'm going to start this by saying that Penn State is one of the odds-on favorites going into this year. There's a lot of analysts who are very high on Penn State. There were several very notable media personalities that had Penn State number 1 on their top 25, or that picked them to win the national championship this year. So it's not out there. Drew Aller going number 1 as well. Now that's a factor. Looking at FanDuel, that's who I always go to when it comes to odds and advice regarding gambling. They have Penn State at the 4th highest odds to win the national championship this year. I believe it's only Georgia, Texas, and Clemson that are higher. Like I said, Drew Aller is coming back. He had 24 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year. I want to start this by saying that I'm a huge Drew Aller fan. And I push back on the criticism that he gets because you always get people like Drew Aller's ass. He's not clutch. He has turnovers at the worst, least opportune times. And I get that. You know, like you look at that Notre Dame game, it wasn't very smooth. And a drive where he needed to make something happen, he threw an interception. And so I get that. He tries to fit balls in a tight window sometimes. I get that. But I also trust Drew Aller's upside. I mean, he can throw a ball 70 yards standing straight up. He's one of those guys, too. He's best when he improvises, when he rolls outside the pocket, kicks out the pocket. He's run towards the sideline and just kicks the ball out, hits a receiver right there on the sideline. Drew Aller is a factor. He's a very talented quarterback with a high ceiling, and he is one of those guys that I could see making a K. Klubnik-like jump. I really could. I mean, you've got Katron Allen. You've got Nick Singleton coming back this year. People, let me know about that. They have a decent receiving core in State College this year, and there's some scary dudes still on this defense. You got Zane Durant coming back. You've got Denai Dennis Sutton coming back. There's some scary dudes on this Penn State defense, and of course, you've got Jim Knowles there as well. So you're going to have that spear of toughness that Ohio State had last year. You saw what he did up in Columbus, or relatively speaking, they're over in Columbus. It was damn good. That was a damn good defense. And Penn State has always had a tough, hard-hitting defense with James Franklin. So I trust that we'll see that again this year. Now, talking about national championship, I'm going to be honest here. Am I ever going to be the guy that's going to be a pundit, a negative Nelly, a Joe Downer on here, and say, your team will not win a national championship. You cannot win a national championship. No, that's bullshit. I will not speak that into existence. That's like somebody looking me in the eyes and telling me, oh yeah, you'll never be a successful YouTuber. You don't count people out. But relatively speaking, Penn State, these past several years, There's a reason to not trust them in big spots. What's the stat? I believe they're 3-20 against top 10 teams under James Franklin's tutelage. And you also look at their postseason success. I mean, last year was the first time that Penn State ever made the college football playoff, and it was when it was expanded to 12 teams. And so that's a reason for concern going into this year. I'm not going to say that Penn State cannot win a national championship, but it's tough for me to invest my trust in them when you've got teams like Clemson out there. You've got teams like Alabama out there. You've got teams like Georgia out there who have been there and won that. Dabo Swinney's still in the league. Kirby Smart's still in the league. It's tough for me to sit there and say, oh, yeah, Penn State's going to win the Natty, given their track record, because there has been times in the past where I put my trust in Penn State and they let me down. So I'm a little bit, weary when it comes to investing my trust in them again. And it's tough for me to say that they'll win a Natty just because of what they've done in past years. A lot of times they get into big spots, they do unravel despite having a very talented team. But I'm not going to say that it's not impossible. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that Penn State, they don't have Tyler Warren anymore. I watched a lot of Penn State film these past several weeks, and he was the lifeblood of that offense. Penn State's offense ran through Tyler Warren last year. So I just don't know what's going to look like without him. Drew Aller may just find his stride with another receiver. It may be very reliant on the running back duo and also incorporating Drew Aller's legs. He's very mobile as well. I don't know what the identity of Penn State's offense is going to be without Tyler Warren. They could find something, but having that be an unknown, having that being ambiguous going into this year, it's really tough for me to say that they'll win a national championship. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I won't put it past them. Hits me. Thank you for hitting me up with that take. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed that commentary. All right. Hot take number 6. And this is my first time ever really talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes on here. And I love Iowa. I actually have an Iowa shirt, believe it or not. Lego Kit First hit me up and said that Iowa goes 4-8 this year. Shit. And finally gets rid of Kirk Ferentz. He misspelled Kirk Ferentz, but I'll forgive him. I'm a forgiving guy. I'm a forgiving soul. Now, this Iowa program, it's important to note, they have been very loyal to Kirk Ferentz these past several years and during the entirety of his tenure. And they not only embrace him, but they borderline worship him in the state of Iowa. This is, one of the most famous figures in the entire state. And so to move off of a guy like that, it's going to take a lot. That's a decision that has a lot of magnitude. It carries a lot of weight. Kirk Ferentz has a style of coaching and a style of play that overall, when you look at the landscape of college football 5, 10, 15 years ago, it was very effective. It's bully ball. Emphasis on defense, emphasis on holding teams to, 17 to 20 points a game. And then, running the ball, having like that bowling ball style defense. Not a lot of yards, on offense. Not a lot of yards on offense, don't get me wrong, but they scored just enough to get the job done. And Iowa has always had that brand. They've always had that identity that when you play the Hawkeyes, you're going to feel it. Your body's going to hurt. And if you're a Big Ten team, you never want to see the Iowa Hawkeyes on your schedule because it's a bitch to play them. You got that bowling ball style offense and that bruising defense. You never want to see them on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. However, when I was reflecting on this before doing the show, when I was preparing for the show, I compared Kirk Ferentz kind of to Tom Coughlin. Amazing coach, excellent coach. I don't know how long his vision will be sustainable for because it got to a certain point with Tom Coughlin, with both the Giants and the Jaguars, to where the vision just wasn't sustainable anymore. And that's my question is, Does Kirk Ferentz reach that point? Does it become stale in Iowa City? Because looking at Iowa from an external point of view, where I am right now in Fort Worth, Texas, I would say, yeah, it's looking stale. Like I don't. They're good every year. They're like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're good every year. Like they're good for 8, 9, 10 wins. But will they make the playoff? Will they win a playoff game? Like, what's the ceiling? Because if you're a fan, it's everybody's ambition to get to the national championship, to compete for national championship. Is Iowa in a position where they can realistically do that right now? I don't think they are. But what's the priority in Iowa City, right? I mean, what's the priority of that athletic department? How much money are they going to invest in this team? How are they going to divide it with men's basketball, women's basketball? That's another question you got to ask yourself. And so, breaking this down, Iowa goes 4-8, like was suggested to me here by Lego Kit First. I think tough conversations will have to be had in the beautiful state of Iowa. But going back and look what Iowa's done since 2021, they've won 10, 8, 10, and 8 games. That pattern was interesting there. So, I mean, compared to a lot of other Big Ten teams, they've been relatively good. Have they been Ohio State? Have they been Michigan? Have they been Penn State? No. But they've been sustainable. I mean, there was that team in 2015 that went undefeated and almost went to the playoff. Michigan State closed the door on them. But Kirk Ferentz has had a lot of success. This has been kind of like a Utah with Kyle Whittingham, just one of the most consistent, reliable teams out there. And so if you're Iowa, that's what you have to weigh. Do you want to be consistent? Do you want to be reliable? Or do you want to move the needle? I'm a big Kirk Ferentz guy. I think that he brings an element of coaching that I really appreciate into this game. And as a college football fan, I think that losing Kirk Ferentz isn't great for the game because he coaches with a certain level of toughness and he emphasizes things that need to be emphasized, like discipline, like playing a complete game, work ethic. That's something that Kirk Ferentz brings to the table, right? Like that's part of his vision. It's part of his coaching. It's part of his leadership, his vision for this team. And so I think he's great for college football. I don't want to see Kirk Ferentz go with Iowa. But if the Hawkeyes go 4-8 this year, I don't see it happening. But if they do, if they slope off that much, win half of the games they won last year, yeah, tough conversations will have to be had up there. So that's hot take number 6. Hot take number 7. Matthew Collada. I think I said that right, fellow Italian. He hit me up and said that LSU will go 11-1. They'll have the hottest offense in the country. They'll make the college football playoff, and Garrett Nussmeier will win the Heisman Trophy. Again, very loaded claim there, but I like it. Like some of the other takes I've had, it's kind of bold, but kind of realistic too. LSU took a risk this year, and I made a video about this, I think a few months ago at this point. They've rebuilt a lot of this team with the transfer portal. They addressed the offensive line. They addressed the defensive line, their corners with the transfer portal. So there's a lot of new guys on this team. It's a risk that you take because you never really know how it's going to pan out. I've seen teams have success with the transfer portal. Look at what Ole Miss has been able to do. They've amassed a lot of success with Lane Kiffin using the transfer portal. But you also look at what Florida State did last year, and that chemistry just wasn't there. So this could be an LSU team that, you go up to Clemson week 1, you look at them and you're like, oh God, like this is disjointed. Like these guys don't have a lot of chemistry at all. Like you kind of saw that with Florida State and they played Georgia Tech and then Boston College the week after. Like there's just no chemistry with this team at all. Am I assuming they'll go 2-10? No, but that could be the case. That's reality when you bring a lot of transfers. You could also see them go up to Clemson and hit the ground running and bring it to the Tigers, who have a lot of high expectations this year, and win 30-17. And then we're like, wow, LSU from an organizational standpoint looks brilliant. The timing of this transfer portal haul was spot on. You got Garrett Nussmeier, who I think is one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks in college football. Like, there's a lot of elements to his game that I see translating to the NFL. A lot of people say that. A lot of scouts, a lot of analysts say that, sing that same tune. And this year, he's throwing to Aaron Anderson, who really emerged last year, and LSU went in the transfer portal to get Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. And him throwing to both those guys, that wide receiver duo, fuck, that's terrifying. And I think that you really can see Garrett Nussmeier's game elevate. And now, a huge factor in Garrett Nussmeier improving his game this year will be minimizing turnovers. I was flying back to New York a few weeks ago, and I was watching the highlights of the LSU Texas A&M game last year. That was just one of those really fluky anomaly games last year. Like, A&M had much more rushing yards than they did passing. But moving back to the point of Nussmeier here, a lot of costly turnovers that shifted the momentum into A&M's direction and helped them win in College Station. That cannot be the case this year if you want LSU to go 11-1 and make the college football playoff, compete for national championship. He has to be consistent. He has to hold on to the ball, make smart decisions. Sometimes you don't have to try to squeeze that ball into a tight window. You saw this happen with Drew Aller last year as well. Sometimes you just got to take the easy pass and get into that rhythm, get that offense going. And then, yeah, when you're feeling confident, you're feeling good, turn up the dial. You got Aaron Anderson. You've got Nick Anderson, the Anderson twins, the Anderson duo. You can make shit happen, but ease into it if you're Nussmeier. You don't have to make things happen all the time. He's one of those very talented guys, and he knows he's talented. But use it as leverage. Don't use it against you if you're Garrett Nussmeier. The sky is the limit for him. I've heard many people say he's the best quarterback in the SEC. I'm not going to review my rankings yet, but if you say that, I don't necessarily disagree. And he is one of your Heisman frontrunners this year. So if he does what he did last season and minimizes turnovers, I can very well see him hoisting up the Heisman Trophy in New York this year. And LSU's got a tough schedule. So kind of like I was saying with Iowa State earlier, going 11-1 is a tough ask. And I think an even tougher ask of LSU. Because while this is a very talented, very revamped team, they have to go to Clemson, to Tuscaloosa, and to Oxford. 3 very tough places to play. I've been to all 3 of those places, and it is not easy to play in any of those environments. Not to mention, they got to play Texas A&M. They got to play South Carolina. Those are 2 teams that nobody wants to see. And so, while this is a very promising LSU team that's very retooled, asking them to go 11-1 is crazy. I put that at like a 0.75 on the boldness scale. But this is going to be a hot offense and I think a very improved defense. So thank you, Matthew Collada, for that hot take. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. Hot take number 8 from one of my most consistent followers on TikTok, James J. made the play. He makes some really good edits. Arkansas. Go check those out. I got a lot of hogs that follow me. So love y'all too up in Fayetteville. But James J. made the play, hit me up and said, Arch Manning or Austin Simmons won't be ready for what they're going to face this year. It's a hot take because I like both Arch Manning and Austin Simmons a lot. Both of them are thrown into really good receiving cores this year, and I just trust both of their skill sets. I think that both guys have a really good year, but they're also first-year starters. So with the pressure that they're facing from those fan bases, I mean, those are 2 fan bases that always have a lot of expectations. And so going into this year, you're filling the shoes of Quinn Ewers if you're Arch Manning. You're filling the shoes of Jackson Dart if you're Austin Simmons. Going into this year, I mean, it can be tough. It can be tough. That pressure can get to you. And, you realize how fast them SEC defenses move, how quickly you got to make adjustments, how loud those environments are. And you're the guy with the helmet on, with the headset on, and you're having to make those audibles on the fly. Like, yeah, shit can get real. really fast. And especially if you're Arch Manning, you're playing Ohio State week 1. I mean, that's huge. Austin Simmons has some crazy environments he has to go into this year. But when I compare these two guys and I break down their respective situations, I think Arch Manning is in a much better situation than Austin Simmons. I mean, you're looking at a lot of turnover on Ole Miss's offense this year. I think that generally from top to bottom, Texas is a better team than Ole Miss. And so Arch Manning just has more support than Austin Simmons from that standpoint. And Arch Manning has also had more time to sit and develop than Austin Simmons has. And so I think that Arch Manning is more poised for immediate success this year. And if there's any guy in this combo that I don't see being ready to reach their potential this year, it's Austin Simmons. But I'm also not freaking out about these two guys this year because if Austin Simmons doesn't perform to the level of expectation, he's got another year, and I think he can make it work. I know that the general public will flip if Arch Manning underdelivers this year, and there's a lot of people that are licking their chops and waiting to point their fingers at him and say, "Overrated, overrated, I told you." I'm not freaking out. Let both these guys develop. They're guys with high ceilings who have a lot of promise. I can see either one of them starting this year and not being polished, not being refined, having to find their groove, find their rhythm. But don't freak out because I think that all will be well for both Arch Manning and Austin Simmons. Thank you, James J. The Play, for that hot take. I really appreciate it. All right, number 9, second to last. We've got Eric Edwards, 903, an Ole Miss fan, who hit me up and said that there will be 4 teams in the SEC that go 10-2, and the race to Atlanta will come down to a tiebreaker on Thanksgiving weekends, and there will be no undefeated teams in the SEC. Now, this take really goes back to what Luke and I were talking about this past Wednesday with the SEC and Big Ten argument. There's so many really good, really talented teams in the SEC with excellent cultures who are all going to be fighting and vying for a slice of that apple pie this year. We've got Georgia. You've got Alabama. You've got LSU. You've got Texas. You've got Ole Miss. You've got Texas A&M. You got South Carolina. You got Florida. And the list goes on and on and on and on. There's so many teams that have a lot of promise and high ceilings in the SEC this year. I mean, it's a very talented conference. Still, whether you want to accept that truth or not. But what happens when you have that volume of really good teams, they all have to play each other. They all see each other 9 times during the year. And so what's going to happen is they beat each other out. And your record gets a little diluted. It's the SEC teams' records that face the consequences. Because you'll have a season like last year where you look at Georgia and they're 10-2. You look at A&M and they're 8-4. You look at Alabama and they're 9-3. Are those bad teams? No. Don't get me started on Ole Miss being 9-3. But yeah, Ole Miss 9-3. South Carolina 9-3. Very good football teams. But they played teams that are just as good as them. And you'll have teams in the SEC like Florida who are excellent from top to bottom, but they go 6-6 because they have a ridiculously challenging schedule. But they may be better than, an Iowa State who's 10-2. That's a situation that you're facing in the SEC. All these teams are playing each other. And so when it comes to that race for the playoff down the line, I mean, we saw exactly that last year, like I just explained, with all those teams with blemishes all over their record, all over their schedule. You had that tie going into the final week of the season last year where you had Texas and Texas A&M battling each other for a spot in the SEC championship against Georgia. I mean, that could be the situation again this year. You could have like a little 4-way tie going into championship weekend this year. How do you figure that out? It'll be fascinating. But with as much talent and as many really good, great teams as we have in the SEC, they all have to play each other, and like it or not, some are going to beat each other. And so that's where I can see those 4 teams vying for that spot for Atlanta, all sitting there at 10-2, just like Eric Edwards suggested. Excellent take. I don't think that that's that far out there. I mean, there's teams I have high hopes for, like a Texas. I feel like they're built for this year. I could see Texas going 11-1. I don't see them going 12-0. Alabama, one of the best rosters in college football from top to bottom. I don't see them going 12-0. They're going to lose a game at some point. Georgia, I know there's holes in that roster. I know you don't have any of those guys that really separate themselves like you've seen in Georgia the past, like a Jalen Carter, like a Jordan Davis, like a Brock Bowers, but it's still a Kirby Smart coach team. And damn it, they're going to perform like one. And so, even though you have all those good teams out there, they're going to play each other and there's going to be losses. So, I love that take from Eric Edwards 903. And lastly, Paige being Paige hit me up, and this one's just out there. Sharon Moore is a better coach than Marcus Freeman. There's hot takes, and there's takes that are just plain wrong. And right now, on this current day, on July 13th, 2025, this take is wrong. Am I going to sit here and say, kind of like a Penn State, like I explained a few minutes ago, am I going to sit here and say that Sharon Moore can't be a better coach than Marcus Freeman down the line? Absolutely not. I think that guy's buying to Sharon Moore. I think that he has a knack for connecting with players, understanding their background. He's excellent at that. Guy has a lot of empathy. I give him credit with that. He has the tools. He has what it takes to be one of college football's successful head coaches. Not to mention he worked under the tutelage of one of the best college football coaches of my time, Jim Harbaugh. And he's at one of the single greatest programs in college football in Michigan. And the resources there, financial resources, you've got a program, university, that's completely bought into the football program. I mean, he has all the tools right there at his disposal to succeed and succeed fast in Michigan. And so, even though he has all of that, and I can see Sharon Moore becoming a successful head coach fast in Michigan, on the flip side, if he doesn't do it quickly, those conversations will happen up in Ann Arbor. And, you could see a couple years down the line them making a change, because that's just the kind of pressure that you face as Michigan's head coach. But I believe in Sharon Moore. I believe in his vision up there, and I believe in him using those resources at his disposal to turn Michigan into a powerhouse once again. Yeah, they fell off a little bit last year. They were like in Alabama, right? I mean, whenever you lose a legend of a head coach, like a Jim Harbaugh, like a Nick Saban, there's going to be setbacks. You're not going to be the team that you were. And if you have the expectation, I'm sorry, but you're crazy. I think Sharon Moore is going to be a very successful head coach in Ann Arbor. Is he better than Marcus Freeman yet? Absolutely not. Because Marcus Freeman has taken Notre Dame to heights that they haven't been to since the 90s. Growing up. I mean, my dad's a Notre Dame fan. I watched all the games growing up. I watched this team lose to Tulsa. I watched them lose to South Florida. I watched them get walloped by Navy. Watch them lose to Army. Watch them lose to Marshall. Watch them almost lose to Toledo. I've seen this team miss bowl games, sit at around 500, 7-5, playing the Sun Bowl every year. Notre Dame was not what they are now growing up. Brian Kelly, after he came there from Cincinnati, he started to build this program back up again brick by brick. They went undefeated in the regular season in 2012. They went to the Natty, got walloped by Alabama, but brought them back to the college football playoff several years later, where they got beat by Clemson and then did it again in 2020. A national championship and 2 college football playoffs. Brian Kelly really built that program up, but Marcus Freeman took them back to heights that they haven't been to in years. Because you look at 2012, Notre Dame stuck into that national championship going undefeated. The schedule is not nearly as challenging as Alabama. They're not nearly as battle-tested as Alabama. They were not as good as Alabama, and you saw that in that game. Notre Dame felt different this year. They had to win 3 consecutive games to get to where they went. They beat a Georgia team who was almost a dynasty in the making. Head-to-head, fair and square. Don't want to hear any excuses. They beat Georgia head-to-head convincingly. Very deep, very talented Penn State team. Beat them head-to-head. Beat Indiana at home. fought tooth and nail to get to where they were. And they competed for Ohio State for a lot of that game. Ohio State overwhelmed them just like they overwhelmed everybody after November this year. So Notre Dame has the culture and they have the makeup to be a sustainable team for the foreseeable future. Notre Dame is not a fluke. Marcus Freeman is building brick by brick one of the best cultures in college football. I talk about guys buying into Sherrone Moore, guys buy into Marcus Freeman. Guys go to Notre Dame to play for Marcus Freeman. They're in the top 5 in recruiting rankings right now for 2026. And that's a spot that you haven't seen Notre Dame in for years. I don't think you ever saw them in that position with Brian Kelly. But they have a fantastic staff, and it's also spearheaded by Marcus Freeman. Guys buy into him. He has that aura about him. He has that energy about him to where guys want to run through a brick wall for the guy. And that's terrifying. Notre Dame's not going anywhere. Sherrone Moore, there's potential there. He hasn't proven himself yet. Marcus Freeman has proven himself yet. It's a no-brainer. Marcus Freeman, I would say, toe-to-toe, is a better coach right now than Sherrone Moore. But it's not to say that Sherrone Moore can't creep up there in these next couple of years. All right. Those are all of the hot takes of the day. Of course, there's a lot of, Alabama's overrated, this and that. You have pubes on your head, da-da-da-da-da. It's like, tee-hee-hee, really funny. But I broke down the ones I took seriously. And those are some really solid hot takes. So for everybody out there on TikTok, thank you for commenting on that post. I genuinely appreciate it. And I can't have some more meaningful conversations about college football and NFL moving on the line as we approach the season. Y'all are what make this time of year fun. I mean, these are the dog days right now. It's July 13th. There's nothing going on, but y'all make it fun. So from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it. All right, let's shift gears and take a little trip down I-30 from Fort Worth here to the opposite side of the Metroplex, the city of Dallas. And let's talk about those SMU Mustangs. So SMU went on a magical, fantastic run last year. In their first year in the ACC, they appeared in the ACC championship. Absolutely nobody saw that coming, including myself. I believe I had Florida State and Miami in the ACC championship last year. SMU was not even a thought on my mind. But I just saw the Mustangs continue to win games. And it was no coincidence because they've done a fantastic job recruiting these past couple of years, fantastic job using their NIL resources. They have a lot of them these past few years. And Rhett Lashley spearheading the vision of this team. Like, this is a program that has a lot of promise. And they belonged where they were last year. It was no fluke at all. But my question for this segment here is, how does SMU build off of last year? And how good are they this year, relatively speaking, comparing to last year? Well, you have Kevin Jennings returning, who's a dark horse contender for the Heisman this year. The young man has a lot of promise. He's lethal on his legs, can turn on a dime, very agile. If he finds a hole, he's gone. But he's an amazing passer as well. His throwing motion's amazing. He's accurate. He is a threat in so many ways. And Kevin Jennings is a fantastic leader. Guys on that team really buy into him. Like, he has that element about him. However, the one downside to him, and granted, he's still young. He was thrown in the fire last year after Preston Stone got hurt. He galvanized SMU's offense. I'll tip my cap to him for that. But the one downside about Kevin Jennings was that the two games in which SMU had a lot of pressure last year, ACC championship against Clemson and first round of the college football playoff against Penn State, Kevin Jennings turned the ball over a combined 5 times. Wasn't very sharp against Clemson, but was an absolute train wreck against Penn State. And so that's my concern about him going to this year. He's got to clean that up. And so you wonder to yourself, is that going to be who he's going to be? Because there are guys in college football and the NFL who never shake that. They get into big spots and they just freeze up. They're not the same guy. They're not as sharp as they usually are. They're not as smooth as they usually are. Or was it just a first-year jitters type thing? And I'm going to give Kevin Jennings the benefit of the doubt about that because, if you're a first-year quarterback, you're going from Dallas, Texas, and you're playing up in State College, Pennsylvania, you're freezing your ass off. You're from Oak Cliff, Texas. You're not used to that, right? I mean, you saw him go out onto the field. He was freezing. But you have to adjust to that. And so that's my question about Kevin Jennings is, does he adapt? Does he evolve? Does he make those strides? Does he make those improvements this year? Playing in different environments, playing in big games. I trust him. I give him the benefit of the doubt, but I have to see it. Now talking about SMU as a team as a whole this year. Comparatively speaking, they only have 53% return production, which isn't great. I think that's good for 78th in college football in the FBS. That's not great at all. I mean, you see teams out there like Clemson in their own conference, 81% return production. Arizona State, 79. Illinois, 76. Like those are, and it's that continuity, it's that retention that leads to championship contention in college football. You saw out of Ohio State last year that all those guys coming back to run it back. You saw with Michigan the year before, in Georgia the year before that. That's the fabric. That's the DNA of championship teams. I don't see that from SMU this year. 53% return production. They lost key components of their team last year. Running back Bashard Smith, who is huge for opening up the passages of that running attack, along with Kevin Jennings and his speed, and Elijah Roberts on defense. Losing him is going to be a blow too. However, they still do have several key components to their run last year. So this is still going to be a very deep, very promising, very talented SMU team. I expect SMU's secondary to be improved. Their defensive line, I don't think it'll be as potent as it was last year. However, it'll still be a threat. My biggest concern for SMU going into this season is their schedule. They're playing a lot of teams that they did not play last year in the regular season. They're playing Clemson. They're playing Miami. They're coming out here to Fort Worth to play TCU on the road. Those are three challenging games. Those are three games that SMU could drop. But they could also win them as well. This is a very talented team. So I'm not going to put it past them. But comparatively speaking to last year, Clemson and Miami were not on the schedule, and SMU was fortunate enough to have TCU at home. I trust Rhett Lashley and his coaching style, his vision for this Mustangs program right now. I mean, it's sharp. SMU is marching the beat of a different drum than they've been these past couple of years. And I think that you look at the next 3 to 5 years, and SMU is going to be in the college football playoff conversation. They're going to be a fixture. It was not just a 2024 thing. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be in that conversation. But comparing 2024 to 2025, no. I don't think they go 11-1 this year. I don't think they win 11 games. I think that their schedule is more challenging, number one. And number two, their team's diluted. It's not as good as it was last year. And so looking at FanDuel, like I said, that's where I always go for those over-under win totals and for championship odds. SMU is at 8.5 right now, and I think that's reasonable. I have the Mustangs winning 8 to 9 games this year, going 8-4 or 9-3. I think that they will be competing for a spot in the college football playoff late in the season. However, I just think that the schedule's a little bit too much, comparatively speaking, to their roster. So those are my thoughts on SMU. Last year is not a fluke. This team will continue in the conversation. They're recruiting great for 2026 as well. So they continue to build that foundation from a roster standpoint. Rhett Lashley continues to build the foundation from a culture standpoint. SMU looks very promising. They have a great trajectory, but this year, the result will not be as good as last year. I don't see 11-1 for the Mustangs, but this will still be a very good football team in Dallas, Texas. All right, y'all. That's all I got for today. This was a really fun show. Giving some hot takes, talking SMU football, the future of the Stangs, how they look this year, and now talking about the future of the era and what we have cooking here. This Wednesday, I'll be going live with Luke Close, as we do on Wednesdays, talking college football. This week, we'll be talking Ole Miss and Oregon. So there it is. The cat's out of the bag, the two O's. It'll be a very O-centric podcast on Wednesday night. But I want to thank you all for hopping on tonight and for talking these hot takes with me. This show was a lot of fun. This is how we keep the vibes high and the quote-unquote off-season and build the expectation into the season. We just take the hype from one level to the next. But thank you all for watching tonight. I really appreciate all of yous. You're the foundation of this channel, and we continue to build this thing brick by brick every day. From Fort Worth, Texas, Brian out. Have a great day.